Ethan's boots crunched against the damp asphalt as he dragged the overflowing trash bag toward the alley behind his apartment building. The night was unusually silent, the kind of silence that made even the smallest sound, a dripping faucet, a rustling leaf, feel like a shout. He paused, glancing up at the pale moon. It looked almost wrong tonight. The light didn't just illuminate the street, it seemed to press down on it, casting everything in a cold, ghostly glow. Just another late night, he muttered to himself, hoisting the bag over his shoulder. Trash duty was never glamorous, but at least it was predictable. Ordinary. Safe. But safety, he would soon learn, is a fragile thing. As Ethan reached the alley, a sudden gust of wind swept past, carrying with it a faint metallic tang. He frowned. The wind shouldn't have been moving anything, the trees were bare, the night still. And yet, there it was, a shimmer, a faint glimmer that danced at the far end of the alley. He blinked, thinking it was a trick of the streetlight, a reflection on a puddle. But the shimmer stayed, almost pulsing, as though it were alive. Ethan swallowed, telling himself he was imagining things. It's just the city lights, or maybe a rat, he said. But the words sounded hollow in the emptiness. He stepped forward, dragging the trash bag behind him. Each step seemed louder than the last, echoing off the brick walls like a warning drum. That's when he felt it, a subtle shift in the air, a pressure that pressed against his chest. He stopped, heart hammering, and turned his head. Nothing. Just the empty alley. And then he heard it, a voice. It was weak, faint, yet commanding, like a whisper that could bend reality. Ethan. He froze. The voice wasn't coming from anywhere familiar. It didn't echo, it simply filled the alley. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his feet were glued to the ground. The air grew heavy, charged, as if the world itself was holding its breath. "Who's there?" he called, his voice shaking despite his efforts to sound calm. Only silence answered, long, suffocating silence. Then came the shimmer again. This time it moved, stretching and curling in shapes that didn't make sense, colors he didn't recognize flickering across the air like liquid fire. Ethan's stomach twisted. He should have turned and run, should have screamed for help, but some part of him, a small, irrational part, couldn't look away. And then he felt it. A hand, enormous and clawed, suddenly wrapped around his own. The strength was gentle but unyielding, almost imploring. Ethan gasped, stumbling backward, the trash bag tearing open and spilling garbage across the alley. But he didn't care. All he could do was stare at the hand, at the scales that shimmered with fading light, at the sheer impossible size of it. And then he saw the eyes. Piercing, ancient eyes, filled with centuries of pain, wisdom, and something else, desperation. The figure leaned forward, massive wings folding awkwardly in the narrow alley. Scales, black and iridescent, caught the moonlight in flashes of fire. Ethan's mind screamed for explanation. This couldn't be real. It had to be a dream. I'm? Ethan stammered, unable to finish the thought. The voice came again, stronger this time, a gravelly rumble that seemed to vibrate through the alley and into his bones. You must carry the flame. Ethan blinked, shaking his head. I don't understand. The creature, the dragon, if that was what it truly was, coughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Pain etched every line of its massive body. No time, listen, only you can. The words faded as the dragon's strength waned, but the urgency remained, pressing down on Ethan like a tidal wave. And in that moment, everything ordinary about his life, the trash, the quiet nights, the safe, meaningless routine, shattered. He was no longer just Ethan, the guy taking out the trash. Something unimaginable had chosen him. And the night, which had seemed so ordinary just minutes ago, had become the first page of a story that would change everything. Ethan's hands shook, still holding the dragons. The world around him felt thinner somehow, as if the alley itself could dissolve at any moment. And somewhere deep in his chest, a spark, tiny, but alive, flickered. He didn't know what it meant. But he knew one thing, nothing would ever be the same again. Ethan's heart pounded so hard he was certain the dragon could feel it. He stared at the massive, shimmering creature before him, unable to comprehend how something so impossible could exist, let alone choose him. The dragon's eyes, vast and ancient, softened for a moment. You are the one, it rasped, its voice like gravel sliding over stone. Every word trembled with the weight of centuries. The first human, to bear my power. Ethan recoiled. You're joking. This is some kind of elaborate prank, right? A stunt? Maybe an AR thing. His mind raced for explanations, anything that would make sense of the impossible scene. But the creature's gaze didn't waver. "No joke," the dragon said, coughing weakly. Smoke drifted from its nostrils, carrying the acrid scent of burning stone. "I have ruled for centuries, and now I die. But the darkness, it will not wait. Only you, can continue the flame." Ethan took a cautious step back, brushing himself against a wall. "The flame? What flame? What are you talking about?" The dragon's massive head dipped lower, tilting closer so that its eyes were level with Ethan's. The alley seemed impossibly narrow now, pressed together by the sheer enormity of the being. "Long ago, I was entrusted with the protection of both worlds, the human and the hidden, the realm beyond sight. Shadows of power rise again, creatures of hunger and malice. My kind, we were the only barrier. Now I am dying. And if the flame dies with me, all is lost." Ethan swallowed, his mouth dry. "You mean, the world is in danger?" "Yes," the dragon wheezed. "And you are chosen. I have watched you, little one. There is strength in your heart, courage you do not yet know. You will carry it." "Me?" Ethan exclaimed. "I take out trash. I pay bills. I can barely make instant noodles without burning them." Panic surged, the absurdity of the situation pressing down like a boulder. "How am I supposed to fight anything?" "You are not yet ready," the dragon admitted, voice softening. "But the flame will awaken in you. I can guide, teach, only a little before I fall. But the first step is yours. You must accept it." The dragon's wings twitched painfully, rustling against the alley walls. Its tail scraped the ground, sending discarded trash sliding like tiny avalanches. "Take my hand," it said. "Feel the fire, and the bond. Let it choose you, as I choose you." Ethan hesitated. The rational part of his mind screamed at him to run. Every horror movie he'd ever seen flashed through his brain. But something, a pull he couldn't explain, urged him forward. He reached out. The instant his hand met the dragon's claw, a pulse of heat exploded through him. It wasn't painful, but it was overwhelming, like lightning chasing through every vein and muscle. Colors erupted behind his eyes, shapes twisting and bending, visions flickering in and out. Firestorms, shadowy monsters, cities on the brink, and a figure, massive, majestic, terrifying, standing in defiance. Ethan staggered, gripping the dragon's claw tighter. I don't understand," he gasped. "You will," the dragon said, its voice fading but resolute. "Time is short. You must awaken the flame, before they come." The alley trembled, and a faint rumble echoed from the city beyond. Ethan's senses, sharpened beyond human comprehension, caught the faintest movement in the shadows, silhouettes twisting unnaturally, shapes that should not exist. "They are already here," the dragon warned. "And they smell the dying fire." Ethan's legs felt weak, but he forced himself to stand taller, the heat from the dragon's claws settling into his chest like a spark ready to ignite. The ordinary life he had known, the trash bags, the quiet apartment, the predictable routine, had vanished. The dragon coughed again, smoke curling from its nostrils. "Remember, the flame chooses its bearer. You are the last hope. Do not falter." And with a final, shuddering breath, the dragon slumped forward, its enormous body folding into itself as if the world could no longer support its weight. Ethan barely had time to catch his balance before the creature's warmth faded, leaving him trembling, alone in the cold alley, with the echoes of a dying roar lingering in his ears. Ethan looked at his hands. Nothing seemed different, yet everything had changed. He could feel it. Deep inside, a pulse, a fire, a heartbeat that was not entirely his own. He had been chosen. And from that moment, nothing would ever be ordinary again. Ethan stumbled backward, clutching his hands as if the fire pulsing within could burn him through the skin. He had expected chaos, maybe a miracle, but not this weight pressing down on him like the night itself had turned alive. The alley, the street, even the distant hum of the city felt different now, sharper, louder, alive with energy he could feel crawling under his skin. The dragon's massive form had collapsed against the alley walls, smoke curling from its nostrils, eyes dimming as if centuries of life were being snuffed out like candles. And yet, despite the fading light, the presence of the creature remained, a lingering hum in the air, vibrating through the asphalt and into Ethan's bones. "You said something about shadows," Ethan whispered, his voice trembling. "What did you mean? What's coming?" The dragon's voice, weak but insistent, returned in his mind, echoing as if carried by the night wind itself. "A war, old as time. Shadows that hunger for power. they were never gone. Only I stood between your world and theirs. And now, I fall. You must take my place. Ethan staggered, trying to wrap his head around the enormity of it. Take your place? Me? I'm just Ethan. I can't even. He paused, looking down at his trembling hands. The warmth from the dragon's touch lingered, a heartbeat of power that seemed to thrum in rhythm with his own. I can feel something, inside me. What is this? It is the flame, the dragon's voice whispered, almost tenderly now, though it was strained with agony. The power of my kind, distilled, eternal. I gave it to you because you have what I do not, the spark of choice. Courage, and heart. But it is not enough to simply hold the flame. You must wield it. You must understand it, before they come. Ethan's mind spun. Wield it? Understand it? He didn't even understand what he was looking at. The memories of the dragon, centuries of battles, rulers, kingdoms rising and falling, flooded into his consciousness like a tidal wave of images. Firestorms engulfing cities. Creatures that should not exist tearing through forests and villages. Heroes and monsters alike falling into shadow. And always, the dragon at the center, holding the line, struggling, bleeding, alone. They, the shadows, they're real, Ethan muttered. He could feel them now, lurking at the edges of perception. Shapes shifting in the darkness of the alley, faint but unmistakable. And they're coming for me? For the flame, the dragon confirmed. The last ember. If it dies, they will consume your world. You cannot fail. There is no one else. The alley trembled, a faint vibration running under Ethan's boots, as if the city itself sensed the approaching storm. Trash scattered in little gusts of wind, and shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, reaching toward him. He shivered, a chill creeping down his spine despite the fire within. Okay, Ethan said, gripping his fists. I don't know how to do this. I don't know anything about dragons, or shadows, or whatever this flame is. But I have to try. Good, the dragon whispered. Your first lesson is perception. The shadows move in ways your mind cannot yet predict. You must see them, sense them, feel their intent. Only then can you act. Only then can the flame guide you. The heat in Ethan's chest flared suddenly, bright and sharp, like a living thing awakening. He gasped, taking a step forward, and the shadows recoiled slightly, as if aware that the flame had chosen a new bearer. They're afraid of it, of me? He asked, incredulous. Not of you, the dragon corrected. Of the power that now flows through you. But fear can change. If they sense weakness, they will strike. You must not falter. Remember, the flame judges the heart. Courage and choice will define your victory. Ethan looked around the alley. The shadows were still there, lingering, testing, probing. His heart thudded. For the first time, he understood that his life as an ordinary man was gone. The world he knew, safe, mundane, predictable, had ended in the span of one impossible night. And now, he was alone, chosen, and hunted. He squared his shoulders, taking a shaky breath. Then I'll learn. I'll figure it out. I'll protect the flame. A gust of wind swirled through the alley, scattering the remaining trash. Ethan's pulse raced, but the fire inside him pulsed stronger, warmer, like a heartbeat of its own. Somewhere deep in the distance, a low rumble echoed, distant, but unmistakable. The shadows were moving. The dragon's voice, faint and fading, whispered one final command: go, and awaken what is inside you, before they find you. Ethan turned, eyes wide, feeling the weight of a responsibility older than any human civilization. The city stretched before him, familiar yet transformed, alive with hidden dangers he could now sense. He wasn't just Ethan the trash man anymore. He was the last flame bearer, the chosen successor of a dying dragon emperor, and the first step into a war he could barely imagine. And as he took his first step forward into the darkened streets, the shadows shifted closer, testing, waiting, hungry. Ethan's ordinary world had vanished. There was no turning back. Ethan's hands still tingled from the dragon's touch, a heat that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat in his veins. Every nerve in his body felt alive, buzzing with energy he didn't understand, yet instinctively knew how to move. He clenched his fists, trying to steady himself, but the alley around him seemed to breathe. Shadows shifted at the edges of his vision, coiling like serpents, waiting. This can't be real, he muttered. But deep down, he knew it was. The flame within him, the gift, the burden, the responsibility, was alive, awakening. And with its awakening came clarity. He could see the darkness, the tiny flickers of movement in the corners of the city. Shapes that had been invisible before now revealed themselves, twisted forms, moving too fluidly to be human, yet too organized to be mere hallucinations. A sudden roar shattered the silence. Ethan spun around. From the mouth of the alley, a shadow creature emerged. Its body was fluid, black smoke twisted into a humanoid form, eyes glowing red with hunger and malice. Its limbs stretched unnaturally as it advanced, each step silent but purposeful. Ethan's chest flared with heat. The flames surged, responding to his fear and anger, coiling around him like living fire. He lifted his hands instinctively, and a pulse of energy erupted from his palms. The shadow creature hissed, recoiling as if burned, smoke curling off its form like water hitting fire. "It's working, it's really working," Ethan whispered, astonished. The energy wasn't just destructive, it was alive, responding to him, connecting to his instincts, his emotions. The dragon had been right, courage and heart were the keys. The creature lunged, faster than Ethan could react. He thrust his hands forward, and the flame leapt, striking the shadow. The air sizzled, sparks dancing around the alley. The creature twisted, almost melting into the smoke, but the energy held it at bay. Ethan stumbled backward, focusing, and felt the fire inside him stabilize, spreading evenly through his body like molten metal in his veins. You're mine now," he said aloud, surprising himself with the authority in his voice. The shadows froze, sensing the claim. The alley seemed to pulse in response, bricks vibrating, trash lifting slightly as though the world itself acknowledged the power he now wielded. A second shadow emerged from the darkness, more massive, more terrifying than the first. Its limbs ended in jagged claws, its form flickering and unstable. Ethan's pulse raced, but the fire inside him flared in response. He raised his hands again, energy forming around his fingers like molten glass. The shadows hissed, swirling away from the heat, but he could see their intent. They were testing him, gauging his control. "Stay focused," he muttered to himself. He had no idea how long he could maintain this, but instinct guided him. He visualized the flame as an extension of himself, not just power, but life. His body moved with it, not against it. The air vibrated with the hum of energy, and with a final exhale, he sent a wave of fire surging forward. The shadow screamed, recoiling, before evaporating into black smoke that dissipated into the night. Ethan sank to one knee, panting, hands still glowing faintly. The heat in his chest had dimmed but remained steady, a reminder that the dragon's power now resided in him. The alley was quiet again, but the sense of danger had not vanished. He could still feel it, lurking just beyond the edge of vision. The city around him seemed different now, alive in ways he hadn't noticed before. He could sense the pulse of life, the flow of energy, the subtle disturbances of hidden threats. Every corner, every shadow, was a potential danger. And every danger was now his responsibility. As Ethan rose, a faint whisper echoed in his mind, the dragon's voice, fading but unwavering, "You have begun. The flame chooses you. But this is only the beginning. They will come for you, and you must be ready. Trust yourself, trust the fire." He clenched his fists, feeling the warmth settle in his chest like a second heartbeat. His ordinary life, the trash, the apartment, the quiet, predictable nights, was gone. Replaced now by power, responsibility, and a world that was suddenly much larger and much darker than he had ever imagined. And somewhere, in the distance, the rumble of shadows moving, whispering, waiting, reminded him that the real fight had only just begun. Ethan took a deep breath, letting the fire pulse through him. The first step had been taken. The flame was his. And the shadow creatures would learn, very quickly, that it had a new master. The city night felt alive beneath Ethan's feet. Every shadow, every flicker of movement, every whisper of wind carried meaning now. He could feel it, the pulse of power that had once belonged to the Dragon Emperor now coursing through his veins. The flame wasn't just energy, it was a heartbeat, a living force, a guide. Ethan's hands glowed faintly, the ember-like heat reflecting in his wide eyes. He had survived the alley's first test, and the shadows had learned something crucial: he was no ordinary human. He was the bearer of the dragon's flame. And they would remember that. A sudden chill swept past him. Ethan froze. From the darkness ahead, shapes emerged, twisting and writhing, impossibly tall and inhuman. Their eyes burned red, hunger and malice coiled in their forms. These were no mere illusions, they were the shadow creatures the Dragon Emperor had warned him about. Ethan's chest flared with heat. He didn't think. He acted. The flame inside him roared, spreading through his limbs, his torso, filling the alley with golden fire. He lifted his hands, and a wave of energy shot forward, scattering the first wave of creatures like leaves in a storm. They hissed, recoiled, and regrouped, but he felt no fear, only the burning pulse of courage that had chosen him. One of the shadows lunged, faster than his eyes could follow. But Ethan was faster now, guided by the dragon's lingering wisdom, the instinctive bond with the flame. He struck, and fire spiraled around his fist, wrapping the creature in light before it dissolved into black smoke. The shadows hesitated, almost in awe, sensing that their prey was no longer ordinary. Ethan's confidence surged. He could feel the dragon's essence within him, whispering strategies, lending strength. He was learning, growing, becoming what the Dragon Emperor had intended him to be. The remaining shadows hissed, circling like predators. Ethan's pulse synchronized with the flame. "I won't let you harm anyone," he shouted, voice trembling but fierce. Energy surged, forming a shield around him. When the shadows attacked, it struck them back, waves of golden fire twisting and snapping through the alley. As the last of the creatures evaporated into mist, Ethan fell to one knee, chest heaving. The adrenaline faded, replaced by clarity. He could feel every ripple of danger, every pulse of energy in the city. The flame had awakened completely, and with it, a sense of purpose. He stood slowly, looking up at the dark skyline. The night was still, but he knew it was only a temporary reprieve. More shadows would come. Stronger. Smarter. Hungrier. But Ethan no longer felt powerless. He was ready. The Dragon Emperor had chosen him, and now he embraced that choice. He clenched his fists, fire pulsing through his hands, warmth spreading through his body. The flame was not just a weapon, it was a beacon, a responsibility, a legacy. He was no longer Ethan the trash man. He was Ethan the flame bearer, the first human to wield the Dragon Emperor's power, and the last hope against the rising darkness. A distant roar echoed through the city, low and menacing. The shadows were regrouping. Ethan's heart raced, but he welcomed it. For the first time, he felt alive in a way he never had before, not ordinary, not predictable, not safe. Alive in the way only those who face destiny head-on could feel. He took a deep breath, the fire within settling into a steady, confident pulse. With every step, he claimed his new identity, his responsibility, his purpose. From the alley where he had once dragged out garbage, to the streets now alive with unseen threats, Ethan's journey had begun. The city stretched before him, dark and dangerous, yet full of possibility. He would face the shadows, he would protect the flame, and he would honor the dragon's final gift. No longer ordinary. No longer invisible. He was chosen. Ethan lifted his head toward the stars, the moonlight catching the faint glow still radiating from his hands. "I'm ready," he said softly, but firmly. "Let them come." And with that, the man who had once been nothing more than a trash collector stepped fully into his destiny. The flame burned brighter than ever, and the world, the hidden world, the human world, and all in between, would never be the same again.